So you called this meeting. What are we talking about?
Yes, I did. Well, um, I wanted to catch up on this attempt to create a working group that focuses on the farm to table supply chain. And the reason I think that maybe the next most important step here is that I have been working for several years now with the regenerative movement, so to speak, from whether that's the Sierra Club or Regenerate America or what have you. And what what these groups are missing in my mind is an understanding of the deep operational hands-on aspect of what needs to be done. So there is great theory, and there's actually a lot of development on the farm side, to talk with farmers about the regenerative approach to use cover crops, no-till, crop rotations, and all of that. And my question continuously goes, so you're telling the farmer to change crop and to put a cover crop on, and to rotate crops, but you're not telling the farmer who's going to buy that stuff. And I've been reaching out to some of my former colleagues, and I've been looking at what is happening in the industrial world. I mean, ownership of the food system is actually very, very concentrated. There are very few companies that dominate and control the entire market, and they they have sent signals very recently that they have absolutely no intention of making these changes that would be required to allow farmers to change out of GMO crops and out of monocropping practices. So you
Why
have to
should
find,
why should they?
oh, there is no money in
Um,
it.
right. I mean, to support that costs some money. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, there are only downsides for their existing business models in this in process, and that's no, I mean that's just the way it is. And I built those restaurants. I built fast food restaurants when I worked for Disney,
uh,
and the idea that you can just change a menu item is involved. You need to change out equipment, and when you have 20,000 restaurants with all the same menu, that's an expensive proposition to make. So I haven't been. I mean, even with people who have been in the field for a long time, the and I mean, I talked recently with a catering director, with a with the purchasing the buyer for the local hospital system in Bend, and it was sort of a get together with farmers and food processors and so on. And she was there. Yeah, I say, so how are you doing buying local? She goes, oh, I couldn't buy from those people. I mean, they're totally unreliable. They have no concept what it takes, to supply someone my account. And I mean, just very basic understanding is that catering operations work with rotating menus. They change, they rotate for like 8 to 12 weeks. Um, and then they go on a repeat cycle. So they know exactly what they're going to serve, 6 months or 3 months from now, even by volume and by how many carrots do I need, how many, what meat and how much meat and so on. And the suppliers that they're working with, there's only like two major wholesalers left in the US on a national level. They have software that calculate a menu down into the ingredient level, down to the spices.
who
And
are those two that are left?
that's Cisco and is one, and U.S. Food Service is the other.
Mhm. Uh,
And the so they know exactly what I mean. Basically, take the menu. They take them what they call menu abstracts. That means how much of which or what menu item do you sell? So when you have 2,000 meals, you will end up selling 250 of this item. So they translate this data into orders, and then they are ready to supply when the order comes up. But then they go and turn around into the supply chain and contract with farmers. They consolidate and aggregate their customers into one big bulk, and then they order 1,000 acres of carrots. And then you need 1 acre, you need 3 acres, and so on and so on. And so that system is so efficient, right? I mean, it's cheap now. It's reliable. It's honed in. I mean, I worked on this thing. It's a machine. The problem, of course, is that they have extended these efficiency farmer. So rather than working with 50 farmers who all do some acres, they work with one farmer who does who operates 10,000 acres. So that was this get big or get out mantra that the USDA had for quite a while, that pushed a lot of small farmers out of the game. And so now you're trying to recreate this. And the challenge really is to teach people, because in the US we don't have people that are skilled in outside of these big companies to sit down with a catering manager and disseminate what are your needs, and then go and say, okay, from this farmer we need to produce 3 rows of this per week during the summer, and then you go to a processor and you go to an aggregator and a logistics, right? You need to contract out the supply chain. And you basically have to reinvent this whole system from scratch, unless you get one of the big guys to cooperate, at a local or regional level. But that also needs to be pre-negotiated. So you have to have someone who go in there who knows how this all works, to negotiate these contracts, these relationships. And so that's where my emphasis now is. There's nothing I can add to how do you farm regeneratively. There's plenty of energy in that sector, but the linkage to how do you connect to the markets, that's the challenge.
Okay.
So what I was suggesting is can we create a discussion group where we bring in, invite people, not just the farmer, but to invite people who are in the aggregation business, invite a catering manager, invite willing participants that are required to bring this supply chain, we call it farm to table supply chain, to life, and then discuss how do we structure this, because you have to develop a process structure that is repeatable in many communities around the country. Mm-hmm. This is not one big effort, right? You have to go to Bend, Oregon, sit down with the local guys and say, okay, so where do we start? All right, well, why don't we start with finding some customers who would be interested, in working with us? And then so you sit down with the local hospital catering director and with the school catering director and and the college catering director and say, okay, guys, what would it take for you to buy local? What do we have to do? How do you buy your stuff? Do you need your produce pre-washed and ready to serve, or going to do that in-house? How do you source at this point? And then if they need it pre-washed and ready to serve, then can we find somebody in the local market who can do this? Because now you need a prep kitchen to come into play.
Then you need the size of the market that you're talking about, like the school system or the hospital system, the volume of what they need, didn't you say that it has to come from multiple farmers? I mean, a
Yes.
small farmer can't provide it. You said
Right.
that
So
they could buy from one farmer that grows 50 acres of carrots, as opposed to 50 farmers that grow 1 acre each.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though the 50 farmers that grow 1 acre are probably producing a healthier product, because the guy that's growing 50 acres of carrots is in a business of liquidation over a period of time because
Yeah.
he's wearing out the soil.
Right. So that is referred to as the aggregation capacity that you have to build.
Okay.
And so typically that used to be handled by co-ops. So farmers had organized their own co-ops, and the co-op was owned by the farmers, but they would have a management team in there that included a sales team, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the sales team would go out and negotiate volume contracts, and then come back and say, we need 50 acres of this. Who can do how many acres here? My wife actually comes from a farming family, and her dad was a member of a co-op. And they would get, okay, you do 5 acres of this and you do 10 acres of that. And they had 400 acres, and he would produce 20 different crops in these 400 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And the co-op consolidated, and did some pre-processing, washing, sorting, and so on, and shipped it out. They have literally all been wiped out. In the last 20, 30 years, they systematically wiped out this entire co-op market.
Well, okay. Though if you go from multiple farmers to an aggregator in the middle, isn't that likely to add additional cost as opposed to having to deal with one farmer?
Of course, there is no question. There is additional cost, but then there is, of course, the profit margin, the extraction of value by the corporations that own this stuff. So you lose some, you gain some.
The profit ends up in a different place.
Well, the profit could be cost, right? It could be distributed between small-scale aggregators, processors, logistics companies that are less efficient than putting a 40-foot container onto the farm and loading into one central distribution center. So you're basically employing more people in the middle, small businesses, and hope that you come out in the wash somewhat. But to build efficiencies into this process is also important, because it is not sustainable, for a hospital, for example, to buy food that's like 30% more expensive than what they had in the budget before. So you have to create efficiencies in this process. This is an operational context that none of the folks that I've been working with, in this regenerative context have any experience doing.
Right, because if they're just looking at regenerative farming, they're looking at a piece of the puzzle. All right, the actual growing regeneration of the land and growing of the food, but where's it go? All right, I mean, that's how's it get processed and for whom?
Yeah, and I'm having, you try to explain something to someone who doesn't have any idea what you're talking about now. So it has been a real challenge to explain this, even to people who have been in the business or working on this for a long time. And they all have these like little partial pictures, and the understanding that this can only work if you if you approach it all at once, as a system without any top-down hierarchical oversight or administrative function, right? Because typically something like this would either be organized by one company that has all the resources required to go from A to C, or more likely by the government, that puts in place a regulatory frame where everybody can step into marshals, and the government organizes the whole process.
So why the intent to get from multiple farmers as opposed to continuing to get from Cisco?
So the regenerative effort is to get out of monocrop practices. And that's, for example, when you put the same strawberries into the same soil over and over and over, right? There's nothing left of soil per se, it's dirt. And you just use chemicals, synthetic fertilizers and phosphates and all that stuff to grow this. And you create genetic variations that can withstand the poisons that you put on them and survive that, whereas all the weeds and pests around them die. And so, to change that means that you have to rotate the crops that you're using, and you have to basically you can't put the same crop in over and over, and any kind of monocropping function is bound to attract pests, weeds, and insects that you have to fight with. So to move into this, what they call regenerative process, and to reduce the input of chemicals means that you can't grow 1,000 acres of whatever.
So if Cisco and U.S. Foods understood that they could get a better product for less money, why wouldn't they push regenerative agriculture?
Well, they haven't figured out how to do that. And from an operational standpoint, it's hard to envision how you would. There is another little twist here. When you take as a design imperative, when you put on top of your design the need to restore soil and water back to health, then you have to regionalize this, because the soil and climate and access to water is different in Oregon than it is in Florida or in Southern California. So now you need, and this is what Margaret is doing. They are developing an artificial intelligence program that matches specific types of seeds to a farm, considering their microclimate and the type of soil that this farm is dealing with. And they're saying, here's a range of seeds that would apply to you. So now you turn this whole ship upside down, because this farmer may have grown carrots, for Cisco, and now they're telling him you shouldn't grow carrots because they're just not conducive, to your soil and climate and to the water you have available. So it upsets the entire apple cart.
Well, it doesn't upset the apple cart if the buyer doesn't want what they tell him he can grow. Okay. In other words, they tell him that it's best to grow corn, and the buyer wants carrots. He's going to grow carrots because he's got a market for carrots, but he hasn't got a market for corn.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So it will require, in some cases, the adaptation of menus. So let's say in Bend, we'll go talk to the local administrative hospital and say, your menu has a few items on there that we can only import. Your products currently come out of Mexico, or they come from wherever, but not from your local farmers, and the local farmer can't really produce this reliably. But here's what we could be doing. Now you're starting to negotiate with them to adjust some menus and to localize, your products. And that's when when you think historically, think about Europe. From a landmass perspective, Europe is no bigger than the US, right? I don't know the exact, but it's but you have how many cultures living on Europe? And over hundreds of years and even thousands of years, they have developed cuisines, that could be sustainably grown. So they have been able to grow food without destroying their soil. And over hundreds of years, you had genes that evolved in that customized the recipes to what the local farmers can do over and over and over. So what came out of it is a process structure. And in the end, the Koreans make kimchi out of their cabbage and the German sauerkraut, but there is a process structure, where you grow cabbage at a certain time of the year, because that works, with the rotational needs of the soil and the land and so on. And here in the US, we're treating food like it was just one, and we're not. Florida is different from California, from Kansas, from Oregon. So we should have localized cuisines that respect the local climates and the local diversity. But because we have this corporate system where everything is nationalized, and you have one company that wants to have one restaurant everywhere in the country that has the same menu, they have cut the ability, the flexibility to deal with localized cuisines.
Well, you can develop localized cuisines if the people want to eat them. Okay.
Well,
in other words, the world has become captivated by McDonald's, except for the smarter people who won't eat there. Of course, my last week's strawberries came from Canada, and I was surprised about that. And I said, "Oh, greenhouses."
Yeah.
So and I was very taken by the number 2 exporter of food by dollar value in the world is the Netherlands, and they don't have much land.
Right.
It's all in greenhouses. It's crazy. So, you and I have talked about this before in terms of regenerative agriculture and alternative production methods in the future, because water is going to become an extremely scarce resource in the not too distant future. All right. California is getting drenched and China is drying up. Right. So when I continue to think about regenerative agriculture, I say, okay, if we have the water to do it, and if we don't, what's the alternative? And being able to grow things with 95% less water is attractive. So I have to think about both of them, not one or the other.
Yeah, of course, there's no one size fits all scenario. You're also dealing with climate. So in Oregon, for example, in the winter, you don't grow anything. So the way that historically cultures have survived on a year-round basis is by taking their cabbage and turning it into kimchi, to sauerkraut, so they have vegetables during the winter, right, and the vitamins and all that nutrition that comes with it. And so it's canning, pickling, salting, and so on. So today we have added freezing to it, so you can buy frozen vegetables in the wintertime. But no, we want to have fresh vegetables flown in from Mexico who are full of glyphosate, because that's. But so the changes that are required, that a lot of it is philosophical, and then also like this letter that I forwarded to you from Thorsten, in their research into it showed that, you know, particularly children are so addicted to this foods that has been made purposefully addictive, you know, with chemicals and sugar and salt and, you know, sodium and so on. So this is, yeah, I mean, this is not an easy task, but what it implies is that it has to be, you have to have a number of experts coming together working on this from different perspectives. No, so that's basically what I don't have all the answers. You know, I have awareness of a lot of problems and a lot of issues in the middle, but I don't have, you know, here's what you need to do. But when you have experts coming together, you will find solutions that are regionally, locally appropriate. You know? Because when you go into Detroit, you're dealing with a, you know, mostly black population. Their taste is different. You know, their desire for the types of food may be different than a little whitey town like Bend has. And so there is a need for this kind of local adaptation, and the fast and do it. You know, the more easily will be a transition into restoring soil and watersheds back to health, which is a survival issue, really. You know, because I mean, we have desertified millions of acres of land in the US with this monocrop practice of corn, you know, and it changes the entire rain cycle. I mean, the reason for these disruptive periods of drought and massive rain is that the soil is dry. You know?
So your point about needing multiple experts to contribute to understanding all the pieces of the puzzle, I agree with, though I think, as we've talked before, it has to be done in a way that you don't expect every one of the experts to understand the entire puzzle.
Right.
Because they haven't got that kind of time to commit to understand, which is why I talked before about if you develop a set of relations that make sense at the moment about all of these pieces of the puzzle, and you find out that there's this piece of the puzzle that we need a better understanding of, and we have to go find two experts. When we bring those experts in, we explain this piece of the puzzle and what it's related to, but we don't have to explain to them what you've spent 9 months figuring out. Okay. Right? If they want to know, you can give them a glimpse of it, but you don't have to inflict that entire set of relationships on them, because it'll just turn them off. You agree? Disagree?
No, I totally agree. But typically,
okay.
Also, when knowledge gains, you know, a certain amount of traction, I mean, when you really know what you're talking about, you can basically say it in a paragraph. You know, you can shorten what this person you're talking with needs to know into a paragraph, and then if you need substantiating information, I can give you that. You know, but it doesn't. You don't have to talk a lot, you know, to say that you can't grow this because it's a water-thirsty crop and you don't have water in this region. You know, so you need to go with dry crops. You know? And so or you know, you can talk about the nutritional content of this, or about consumer preferences about this, and so on and so on. And so so you can condense knowledge down to very simple levels. I mean, for example, when I worked for Disney and we were building, you know, the Hong Kong Disneyland, let's say, I was the line of business owner, food and beverage. Well, I needed to have knowledge from the engineering team, because I couldn't figure out why my French fryers wouldn't work. And I bought, you know, I had one restaurant that had like 30 deep, huge French fryers in it, you know, serving 1,700 meals per. And I tested the first one coming in, and it wouldn't perform. And I go to the engineering team and I say, I don't know what the hell this is here, because it works in the US. Why doesn't it work here? I say, well, because they are making gas here by burning oil and transferring it into form of gas. And it has only 48% of BTU as natural gas has. So your burn chamber isn't big enough, right? That's all I needed to know, right? So then I went switched into electric. But then I wanted to switch into electric. Then they told me, no, you have to build a $1.5 million substation to put that many electric fryers in there, so you can't do that either. Then we found out that McDonald's had built a French fryer specifically for the Hong Kong market, that had a burn chamber big enough to. That's what I'm saying. Is so there are things where you need to partner with other specialists to on an issue that has absolutely nothing to do with my French fry, other than you need to know how to cook it. These kinds of things come up in conversations amongst specialists, to solve problems that you can't foresee, as they appear. And that the process of this kind of problem solving is what I'm interested in, to bring people together who, want to move towards a target. So you need to basically prototype something, right? But I think that you can build a process structure that you can replicate anywhere, because you need to start out with find customers who is willing to work with you out there in the market. Then you find out also what do they need, and how can we deliver against that, and what are the is there a logistics provider in the region who would be willing to work with us instead of us going out buying trucks and building warehouses, right?
Yeah. Okay. You can build a process structure that will work anywhere, though that structure needs to be aware that there are a number of alternative solutions that are workable, right? So I had a discussion with somebody the other day about there is no generic solution for homelessness, because people are homeless for different reasons. Right? You can build shelters and get them off the street, but they're still homeless. Right? Now you have to understand why they're homeless and figure out what do you do for this group and this group and this group. So there are multiple different paths to a resolution. There isn't one solution that fits all. But the process that you develop is robust enough to understand that there are multiple paths to a meaningful resolution. Does that make sense?
Okay. That's exactly what I'm after, yeah.
So, back to what we said before, you can push a solution that you think solves the problem, but you're looking at a small piece of the puzzle. All right. So that while they have an understanding of what crops are most likely to produce best in this type of soil, if that farmer doesn't have a buyer for that crop, they're not going to plant it. All right. Yeah. So understanding that piece of what grows best is only part of the solution to the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you can go to a farmer and say, here are like 8 different types of seeds that we can offer you, they have like different types of crops. Then the next step would be, which one of those crops is most likely to find a buyer? Then you can go in the demand side and say, we have farmers who can grow flax, or they can grow this type of produce or what have you. And then you find, you to match this. So this is what I was talking about, brokerage. That is traditionally the role of a broker anywhere in the world. The most critical function that nobody really knows much about, because it's so behind the scene, is that of the broker. So that because and that's the people that I used to work with when I was doing the supply chain for Hong Kong Disneyland, or when I was working for Metro Cash and Carry, which is a big wholesaler. You go to the broker and say, hey, we have some customers and here's what they're interested in. Do you have any buyers for that? And he goes, yeah, and this farmer up there, yeah, I can do this. I can pull something together for you, right? And then he goes to the farm. And I never worked with farmers in my career. because there was always this broker in the middle who would take care of that part. Yeah. And so, and that brokerage function has been radically eliminated in the US. They pulled it into the companies. So when you're dealing, even when you're dealing with Marriott or big hotel chains, restaurant chains, they have their own brokerage function in-house. They negotiate directly with the supplier, with the farmer in this case, or with the processor. To sort of bring this to your attention, what I'm doing.
I'm in. Okay.
Yeah, and I truly appreciate this, Gene. It's awesome. So let's hope we can find some discussion partners who get this and see this as an opportunity.